The person who's going to solve Corona is an entrepreneur. You have the potential to be the best at something in the world. Change is pain. I am not a reader. I'm a learner.
Hello, Lead to Succeed Nation. It's Naphtali Hoff, and welcome to Lead to Succeed, episode 57. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Evan Carmichael. Evan, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Appreciate the love, man. 57 is my new lucky number. Let's go.
You got it. You got it. One of my favorite football players actually had that number. And in full disclosure, we are in the thick of coronavirus, and I'm sort of winging it in the moment because I've got everybody home and kind of doing this. Getting Evan on the show is not a simple thing, as you can imagine, somebody as accomplished as him. So Evan, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for tolerating my Corona craziness at home. I hope we don't have any disruptions, but my kids, even though they are generally getting along pretty well under the circumstances, are prone to an occasional blow up here or there.
I love it.
So thank you. And I want to jump in. The first place I met you, even though you didn't meet me at the time, was I would exercise and listen to these inspirational videos. And you were putting together quite a few, I'm sure you're still doing that, some really, really great speakers and thinkers on the topic of leadership, posting them on YouTube and elsewhere, I'm sure. So talk me through, how did you get into this idea of, in effect, collating and organizing and then presenting to the world these leadership nuggets, and what has it meant for you and for your listeners? Kind of take us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think your purpose comes from your pain. I think whatever you struggled the most with as a human, where you felt the lowest, the most worthless as a human, is the thing that you want to help other people through. And so if that was you 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, there's lots of people who currently are what you used to be. And that's when we're called to lead. Those are the people we'll love to lead the most. And so for me, I struggled a lot as an entrepreneur, and I was making $300 a month in the startup that I owned, 30% of, and felt worthless. And I made it harder on myself, and that I was too embarrassed to tell my friends that I wasn't working, that $20 to go for pizza and beer was too much for me. And I instead told them, I'm hustling, I'm being the entrepreneur. Meanwhile, like, I was just struggling. And I made it harder on myself. So that's why I love helping entrepreneurs so much. The path that got me out, the thing that actually led to my success in entrepreneurship, was modeling success. So I had a software company. I was struggling and nothing was working. I felt like I tried everything. And then on my lowest day, I said, somebody's got to figure this out. Like, am I that stupid that I can't figure out how to sell software that's good, that works, that helps people? And the only person I could think of was Bill Gates. I said, well, Bill Gates started Microsoft. How did he do it? And it was really not out of a stroke of genius, more out of a just absolute frustration at the end of my rope, that I decided I'm just going to look at how Bill Gates started Microsoft. Not how he makes an extra $1 million now, but 0 to 1. How did he do that? And I learned his story. I emulated his success. I applied it to my business. And then shortly after, got my first deal for $13,500, which, may not seem like a ton of money, but I'm making $300 a month. There's no hope. I mean, I'm ready to quit and give up. And finally, there's like this lifeline that I have that I can start to build my business off of. And so what have I done for the past 20 years is model success. It worked for me. And now, because it worked for me, I want to help other entrepreneurs who were like me, or who are like who I used to be, and teach them how to model success as well. I happened to stumble upon it as a last resort, fluke at the end of my rope, willing to give up. I want to hopefully not have other people get to that low. And so, I learned this from Bill Gates. Here's what you guys can learn from it as well. And I've had my YouTube channel for 11 years now. And the first video I did was on Walt Disney and what you can learn from his story. And ever since then, I've been sharing my own advice, but also trying to help make it easy for you to understand what all these legends have gone through and their words of wisdom. And hopefully some of it, seeps in and sinks into you so that you can go off and become the leader that you want to be.
There was a lot in that answer, Evan, and I think that, my takeaways, even before you pivoted to talk back again, which was the original question about YouTube, you talked about the pain. So often, I actually just mentioned this in a conversation with teachers on a webinar, So often in today's days and age with social media and everything else, we're all putting out there the successes or the claimed successes. Everything is so rosy. And then those of us who struggle feel like we have no one to talk to. We feel empty because everybody out there is succeeding and we're not. And so it's really great when someone like yourself kind of lifts the curtain, demystifies the process, shares with others that it really wasn't so easy, and keeps putting that message out there that every successful person, by and large, there are always exceptions, struggled and had to work and had to learn and got, in many cases, your second point, got a mentor, whether a literal mentor that you're talking to or somebody that you could emulate, right? Success leaves clues, as Tony Robbins likes to say. So we have to figure out who's successful, whether in our industry or elsewhere, and then follow their examples. And then you went and you took it and you put it out there for people to absorb. And that's really where I gained so much. So you should know that it's really making an impact. I'm sure you're getting this feedback all the time, but from my personal perspective as well, it really taught me a lot about leadership. And I'd like to pivot, if I may, with the second question. I mentioned that we're recording this in the epicenter, if you will, of, I don't mean literally in space, but just in terms of time, of the corona outbreak and all the challenges. And so many people are working from home. So many people are remote. Many people are feeling isolated. But since this is a leadership podcast, I'd like to focus specifically on the role of the leader and how do you lead in how do you lead remotely? Let's leave alone even difficult times. That's a challenge in and of itself to talk about. And I'm not asking you to give me an entire lengthy response, but just in its essence, what would you say leaders would most be wise to be thinking about as they're trying to lead their teams remotely, especially when it's not the normative culture for them?
Empathy. I would expect people to have a hard time. I would expect them not to be delivering like they are delivering in the office. Some people will thrive and some people will have a really difficult time doing it. Some people are like so jazzed in public, it's what I wanted the whole time. And others will be really struggling and suffering through this. And so empathy for the person, empathy for the situation, and then belief that they can do it. So for the ones who are struggling with it, uh, cheering them on, telling them that you believe in them, giving them hope. Because if they're a good employee or a good team member, they're not happy with their own lack of performance either. Right? Like even in the setup for this, and you've heard Naphtali a couple of times talk about he doesn't want his kids to come in and disrupt. Like he's proud of his work, right? He has a standard for his podcast that now is forced into suboptimal conditions that he's got to deal with. And that's the same thing happening to the people in your team. They have a standard. Like if they're good, if they're just jazzed and they can slack off, they shouldn't be on your team. For the people though who have a standard, want to work hard, want to be proud of themselves, and now find themselves in a situation where it's really hard for them to do it because their whole routine and environment and panic in the media and everything is throwing them off. They don't need you yelling at them saying, "Where's my report on XYZ?" Right? Which is because they're already yelling at themselves. They feel terrible for not delivering to their standard. And so it's empathy, it's belief, it's cheerleading, it's guiding, it's supporting, it's giving them hope, giving them a calm voice, because people are looking to different leaders right now and getting mixed messages of what they should be doing. So you're one of the leaders in their life that can give them clarity, that can give them hope, that can give them belief. And in difficult times is when leaders are forged.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by this, but I want to just emphasize that your answer really was all about the relational side, the human skill element of leadership as opposed to maybe the tactical component. Because on a tactical level, you're also going to need to pivot. Your goals are going to need to look different, your venues, your processes, the resources that you're working with, all of those shift and could shift dramatically. And that's important too. But I think what I'm hearing from you minimally is start with the connection, start with the relationship, start with the belief, the trust, the mindset, and then as needed, work people through their processes, help them to deal with whatever challenges they might be encountering, but from a position of recognition, understanding, and support. Does that make sense? Did I get it right?
Yeah, and I think, and maybe it's just what is leadership. You see, for me, I don't think of it as strategy of what our company should be doing. I don't see that as leadership. I think leadership starts with self-leadership. Like, are you disciplined? Are you, even you, still showing up? It's like, hey, Evan, I can't do this podcast because I'm from home or whatever. Like, no, I booked this. We're going to make it happen regardless. So your own self-control, making sure you're showing up every day, but then leading. Leadership equals human dynamics. Like leadership, for at least for me, without human dynamics isn't leadership. It's something else. It's strategy, tactical, great, but it's not actual leadership. So that's where great, you have your mission. Maybe you have to pivot, great, but now you need somebody to actually make the crew go in this new direction, and that's where leadership comes in.
Nice. I have a feeling I know the answer to this question, but I said I was going
Okay.
to ask it, and here it is. So, what is the world's biggest problem that you want to solve, Evan?
People don't believe in themselves enough. I start with the default view that everybody in the world has what I call Michael Jordan level talent at something. Everybody listening to this show, everybody on the streets, like you are the best at something in the world. You have the potential to be the best at something in the world. It's just probably not what you went to school for, or maybe not what your parents thought you were going to be, or what your culture wants you to be, right? I'm sure if Naphtali was telling his parents 20 years ago that he's going to start a podcast about leadership, you're going to wait, what are you going to do? Right? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Your parents are pilgrims. Like, what your parents at your age had totally limited options compared to what's available to you right now. The fact that we can even be having this conversation in a corona shutdown, be in our homes and still be spreading a message to the world did not exist. And so I start from the point of everybody is a genius at something. The person who's going to solve corona is an entrepreneur who's off solving it, right? Like cancer or whatever other problem you think is the biggest problem in the world, I think is solved by somebody. The problem is the person who solves cancer is a manager at McDonald's because she never believed in herself to go off and chase down her dream or try it. So I think everything else is solved by the geniuses. Just most people aren't living up to their potential.
So
That's the problem.
let's stay there for a minute, Evan. You don't have to
Okay.
answer yours unless you, of course, you want to. But how does a person identify their inner genius, and then how do you want them, or how would you suggest that they take action around that?
So it ties in super well to my new book. It's called Built to Serve, and I guide people through a 3-step process. So it's who, why, and how. So who is your most important core value? What is your most important core value? So for me, it's belief. If you had to think, Naphtali, what's the most important core value for you?
Most important core value, I would say integrity.
Great. So already just knowing that, you know that he has to deal with people of integrity. That if he was going to hire a new video editor to help him blow up on YouTube, and this person had all these great editing skills, but didn't operate with integrity, it doesn't matter. It's over. And if you look back to your life at the most painful moments or the darkest moments, it was because somebody around you or even you yourself were acting with a lack of integrity. And so that knowing that about yourself allows you to create a better future going forward. That everybody that you bring on your team needs to have integrity. Every guest that you bring on needs to be seen through the lens of integrity. If Evan Carmichael is being invited to your show, it's not only because I've got 300 million views on YouTube, it's because he has a message that with integrity he can share. At least that's the intention, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe you make a wrong call. Maybe Evan Carmichael sucks on your show. Maybe he's a total idiot. But knowing that allows you to then attract people into your life who believe the same thing you believe. And that allows you to go so much faster. And it's the same message for leaders. You need to be around the people who have the same core value as you. It's just clearly identifying what is that most important core value. So that's your who. Great. Next, you get to the why. Your purpose comes from your pain. So for me, it was struggling as an entrepreneur. For you, if you're creating this thing around leadership, it's got to be a point in your time where you felt like you weren't a leader and you didn't step up and you didn't believe in yourself. And now you want to go back and talk to 19-year-old you and say, you're a leader, man. Like it's time to own your life and step up. That's really who you're making. Like this podcast is really designed for 19-year-old Naphtali. Like that's
Actually, that's my book, in which I talk about the leader getting started again, sort of reliving my experience. But go ahead.
But it's not surprising. Like
Yeah.
that's everybody's, like that's who you'll love helping the most. If somebody came to you and wanted to be a leader but didn't believe in themselves and was struggling, and they spend 4 minutes in a conversation with you and you light up their eyes and make them believe that, holy cow, I am a leader, and then they walk away and go make a change, in their school, in their whatever. That's going to fill you up to such a high level. It's like, that's my purpose. And that will never get old. You'll be 95 years old, sitting in a senior's home, still loving to create leaders. And that, if anything, you'll just be more resolute. You'll just be more confident in your ability and how to do it, right? Even though you may not be able to move your body anymore, as long as you can open your mouth and use your head, you're going to still be inspiring leaders, which is amazing. Like, to have that clarity from now until the end of your life, to know like, this is what I want to do, is so much more clarity than most of America has.
That's right.
And then to do it under with the base level of integrity, like, you're only going to build leaders through integrity, again, gives you a foundation to build on that most people don't have. And then the last level is the how. So how you go about executing it, that's going to change with time. Right now, you're in a podcast. In 15 years, maybe it's virtual reality, Naphtali popping into your living room, hologram with his message, right? That's going to change with the time. So you're right on trend now, having this podcast, and it's going to be something else in the future. But that's what I want people to go through. Because when you figure that out, it just gives you so much more power, clarity, control than just helping somebody else build their dreams, because they have confidence in theirs and you don't have any confidence in yours.
So this was really great advice, and everyone should definitely grab a copy of Built to Serve. I wanted, though, Evan, if I could, let's go back to the metaphor you used before,
Mm-hmm.
the manager at McDonald's who could potentially be solving cancer, I think was
Yeah.
the example you gave.
Yeah.
So here we have a big problem we need to solve, and
Mm-hmm.
as you mentioned, it's probably going to be solved by the private sector and people with an entrepreneurial spirit and all. But how does somebody who is, for lack of a better term, locked into a particular career or a particular path, what gives them the impetus, or maybe what should give them the impetus to be thinking differently or bigger about their situation? So, like, how does somebody say to themselves, well, I haven't yet met my purpose. I feel like I'm influencing others, I'm impacting others, but I'm doing it maybe on a relatively small scale. In my mind, that's sufficient. So is there any particular advice, direction you give to people to think bigger, to think different, to really be out there, not only solving the world's problems, but making the best life for themselves?
Step one is understand that you're settling for crumbs. You're helping some people. We're built to serve. You're just settling for crumbs. Like, buying a cup of coffee for your coworker at the office is an act of service and makes you feel good, but it's not the same as actually having purpose. So we settle for crumbs of life instead of actually living the full life. Um, the way out of it is recognize, like, what if you were still in the same spot in 10 years? Imagine yourself at this company doing the same thing you're doing for 10 years. We don't make it painful enough, because change is pain. And it's easier to just stay where you are because it's good. Like, it's still, the good is the enemy of
Yeah,
great. Where you're at is good. It
it's
doesn't totally
good.
suck. It's
Yeah.
good.
And why
So
would I want to change it? Right. Exactly. And change
you
is
don't
hard.
notice it enough on a day-to-day basis. From today to the next day to the next day is not painful enough to make you want to change, because it's still good. But if you spread out the horizon to 10 years, if in 10 years you're in the same spot, you're capable of more. You have the potential to do a lot more, to serve a lot more, to be a better husband, to be a better father, wife, mother, entrepreneur, impact, servant, right? You can do a lot more, and you're in the same spot in 10 years. That should be painful.
Yeah. So I want to stay there for a minute because you've done this a few times. And I think it's great how you've kind
Okay.
of brought me back to my 19-year-old self, and I'm thinking 10 years out. And right, it
Yeah.
really is useful to think of your life in blocks of time, because when you do that, you start to say, well, okay, incrementally, I can do this, that, or the other. I can live this life for however much longer. But do I want to still be living in the same house? Do I want to still be working for the same company? Do I want to still have the same title, or, whatever that is? And if you think out further down the road, that could already be an impetus for change that many people won't be driven by in the moment.
Hmm.
So let's say you're someone like me. You're in you're middle aged. You're in your upper 40s. You've already been at it for a while, and life hasn't been bad. You've done a great job in various ways. You could have done better in other ways, but you think like you're leaving stuff on the table, but you're worried that you're running out of time. So
Hmm.
what advice would you give for somebody who's not having this conversation when they're 19 or
Yeah.
25, who had a great mentor, kind of brought them in, a Jim Rohn kind of thing,
Hmm.
where, his mentorship happened early on, and then he was off to the races for the rest of his life, maybe a Tony Robbins kind of person, maybe even you. But for somebody who's like regular, so to speak, like myself,
Hmm. Yeah.
who's doing good work but wants to do better and doesn't have a lot of time? How do you accelerate their process?
You are running out of time,
Yeah.
right? Like you're worried. Good. You should be worried about
We're
it.
all running out of time,
You
but
are.
I am in particular. I know it.
Yeah. But so like own it. Like you're gonna be, you're upper 40, you're gonna be upper 50 soon.
That's right. Thanks for rubbing it in. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no, but like now do something about it, right? Now, like this is a conversation to myself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm turning 40 in May. I'm gonna be, and I treat it like I'm gonna be turning 50 in June. Like it's happening faster, and you feel it as you get older. Time just flies by faster. So I love the fact that you can use that as pressure to say I'm gonna be upper 50 soon. Like, tomorrow I'm gonna blink and I'm gonna be upper 50. What did I do with the last 10 years? I don't look at it as backwards, like, oh, I'm upper 40s and I wasted my 40s. That's not helpful. But ongoing for the next 10 years, you can use that to say, I don't want to regret the next 10 years of my life. I've learned a lot as a leader. And this is especially challenging for leaders because for most leaders, probably for you and your audience, you're the most ambitious, high achieving person that you know in your circle. And so people look at you and say, wow, what a leader. I mean, that's the whole point. You're a leader. And they tell you how great you're doing and how amazing all the stuff you're doing is. It's just that they have low standards. And
Yeah.
so you have to impose higher standards on yourself than anybody else around you. You're the one lifting everybody else up, but who's lifting you up to say, hey, what you did, Naphtali, was awesome, but dude, like this is small compared to what you could be doing.
Right.
Who's from a place of love pushing you forward, not from a place of you suck, you're never going to make anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's partly why I do my channel, in that I want to, no matter how big I think I'm doing and thinking, I then watch a video about Elon Musk who wants to have a backup plan for the planet. It's like, man, I'm thinking small. so so I want to be around, the way I'm solving that problem is I want to be around Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and Oprah, and every day they're in my ear a little bit, forcing me to become a better leader because everybody around me says I'm doing amazing.
Yeah.
And I know that I could be doing more.
And the idea of getting a mentor, joining a mastermind, there are a lot of different ways that we can be connecting with people who are a few steps ahead of us and continually forcing us to move ourselves forward. That is a great point, because I think that we oftentimes I'm forgetting the metaphor right now, but we believe our own press. You know, when I started in school leadership and everyone was talking about the skills that I brought to the table, how wonderful it was, and I kind of sucked that up and just enjoyed it and didn't realize what I needed to do necessarily to take it to the next level. And now that I work in coaching and working in executive coaching in particular and working with leaders and helping them see the next steps, oftentimes it's not that they're doing anything wrong, but they're believing their own press, or they're not seeing beyond the potential that they presently have in front of them. So yeah, we always need to be looking forward. And I think that that's a wonderful thing. Um, Now, was there one person in particular that kind of motivated you, or inspired you, and what was their message to you?
My greatest mentors are my parents. Unfortunately, they're still alive. For the video people, you could, behind me is a picture of me when I'm 8 or 9 years old, and my parents kind of standing above me.
I see
I've
it.
got 5 giant canvases in my office, and that's one of them. That's the middle one. And they would always tell me, "You're Evan Kashili Carmichael. You can do anything that you believe that you can." And that's the constant kind of voice in my head when I doubt myself, when I want to do something bigger. I hear them saying that. They didn't teach me about business. They're not entrepreneurs. They don't, they said, I asked them early when I was in my, youth, say, hey, what job should I get? Like, how do I make money? What should I do? It's like, go be a banker. So I became interested in banking. So entrepreneur advice is not where I go to. That's where I get everything else from, the Steve
Uh-huh.
Jobs and all the other people that I profile. But kind of how to be a human, uh, they're my greatest mentors.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's so important to have that, and if you could have it from your family, that's the best. So that's really very special. Um, so here's a different question for you. You might have already answered it, but I want to hear it more clearly if I can. What
Okay.
would you say in terms of advice? You could choose best or worst, or if you want to choose both, you can. What was the best or worst advice you've ever received?
I struggle with this because I don't look backwards very often. Um, I think the worst advice is probably when I made my first video that I made around believe. So when I found my one word, believe,
Uh huh.
I wanted to make a video on my YouTube channel about it. And it was going to be a departure for what I was usually making. And I sent it to somebody who was in the industry. I made this 6.5 minute video, and he was in the entertainment industry, and he watched it and he said, this video is not going to do well. You can't post it like this. Evan, you don't understand how the internet works. All this stuff. And a younger, less confident version of me might have said, well, he's in the industry. He's an expert, so he knows, and I shouldn't post it. But fortunately, I said, you know what? I like it. So I'm just going to post it. And if nobody likes it,
What do you have
nobody
to
likes
lose?
it, whatever.
Yeah.
And it quickly became my best video on the channel at that time. And now has over 2 million views or something.
Wow.
But even if it didn't work out, maybe he was right. The willingness to listen to my gut, as opposed to typically the worst advice that you get is usually not with a bad intention. Most people who are giving you advice don't want to see you lose, right? There are some people, but for the most part, they don't want to see you lose. The miss is they're telling you what they would do as opposed to understanding what you would do, which comes back to leadership. When you're giving advice to people, it's not what you would do in their shoes.
Yeah.
It's wearing their skin to understand what they're going through and then giving them the answer for them, even if it's not what you would do.
Right.
So that was the biggest miss. And
And
I think
the best advice,
the
anything there?
best is still probably like my parents multiple times, just always reminding me to believe in myself and that I'm Evan Castrilli Carmichael. And it's still that voice, still that filter that I keep coming back to at my core.
And don't be a banker.
Yeah, I wanted, like, you look at my high school yearbook, it says banker. Where are you going to be in 10 years? VP at a bank. That's what I said I wanted to do.
Yeah, I think I'm going to look back at this conversation when life normalizes. I'm hopeful that it will, and do it soon, and kind of reflect back on how entrepreneurs did help fix a situation that got messed up real fast. And I don't want to make this a political conversation, so I'm not going to get into that at all. But definitely the power of entrepreneurship is critical. The power of leadership is critical. And you've left us with so much already, Evan. I'd like, if I can, at this point, we all need a little bit of a lighter touch to
Okay,
conversation. I'd like to pivot to our rapid fire. These
let's
are
go.
short answers. And tell us, please, your favorite hobby.
Salsa dancing.
Okay, I know almost nothing about it. How'd you get into that?
I had a relationship breakup, and I really liked ballroom dancing at the time, but we couldn't do it together because she didn't like it. And then once we broke up, I said, I'm going to go dancing again. Why not? Have fun. And I just randomly did salsa dancing, and now I own the largest salsa dance school in maybe North America.
Nice. Something neat about Toronto that most folks don't know about.
Really nice, welcoming people. Do most people know that?
I know
Everybody
that.
in,
I know
I
that.
mean, Toronto is everybody's an immigrant. Everybody's from somewhere. I mean, I was born in Toronto, but my mom was born in Italy, and my father's mother was born in England. So you're all from different places. So you're just, when you go to school, you're with it's just normal.
It's a level of acceptance. Yeah.
Yeah. You just like diversity training sounds weird because you're just automatically with whatever culture you come from. You'll come to Toronto and you'll be immediately welcomed like you were here.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
A great high energy, low fat snack food.
High energy, low fat. I'm on keto, so I'm flipping. I go like high fat, high energy, low fat.
Not Doritos.
Yeah, that's not low fat for sure. I'm thinking blueberries. Blueberries.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I got a bag of almonds on my desk. Something to keep you going when
Wait,
you
hold on,
want
but
to.
that's not low. Almonds are not low fat.
Oh, you're probably right. Well,
Yeah, almonds are definitely high fat.
they're high
They're
fat, but they're
almost
high in
keto friendly.
protein. Yeah. Okay. I gotta reset my question. So we'll go with the blueberries. Fair enough. And finally, what kind of books do you read, or what example of a book you read for pleasure rather than for business?
Almost nothing. Like I read 3 to 4 books a year. I am not a reader. I'm a learner, and so I learn best through visual, so videos. That's how I learn the most. Like right now, I'm reading Russell Brunson's new book because he sent me the advanced copy, and he's a friend. So I'm slowly working my way through that. So most of the books I read for pleasure, nothing. Like fiction, zero. It's always nonfiction, and I'm going to learn something from it. But it's still, I'm slow. It takes me a long time to process. I listen to zero podcasts because auditory is the worst. Like the fact that I can see you, even though you're in your home,
Uh-huh.
makes it so much easier for me because otherwise I'd have to like really close my eyes and focus if all I could do is hear you.
Got it.
So I think it's about learning. I love learning. I'm visual, so that's where I'm going to get most of my learning.
Yeah, and I think everybody does need to know how they learn best and what stimulates them the most. The
Hmm.
main thing is keep learning and
Yeah,
keep learning the things that are going to move your needle forward, even if it means just sort of better understanding you and your own personal development, separate from the tactical things you need to learn, but
yeah,
be a learner constant.
and for the people in your team, know how they learn,
Yeah,
and try to
well
customize it to
said.
them, not just how you like teaching, but how they
Yeah.
like learning.
Do you have
Big
another
difference.
hour? Because I'd love to unpack that. A great conversation. Thanks again, Evan, and have an awesome day.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for the love. If you have a podcast or interview show and want me to be a guest on it, I have two options for you. There's a link right there next to me. Go click it, and I look forward to being a guest on your show.